This month, the Supreme Court basically just told the former president, who has been convicted of fraud, that going forward, he will be immune for activity we know he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Recall, Donald Trump has openly vowed, if reelected, to be a dictator on day one, that he will weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, that he will round up peaceful protesters and throw them out of our country, and even, quote, terminate the United States Constitution.
Vice President Harris tonight in Houston. This week, President Joe Biden called for a constitutional amendment in the wake of the Supreme Court's shocking presidential immunity decision. Our next guest, the retired federal judge Michael Luttig, a highly influential conservative jurist, endorsed President Biden's plan, writing, quote, "I support a constitutional amendment that would repudiate the Supreme Court's faithless decision in Trump v. United States and restore the animating principle of our nation and of our Constitution that no man is above the law, least of all the President of the United States," end quote. Luttig lambasted the Supreme Court's abominable decision as one that cut the heart and soul out of America's democracy and the rule of law. Quote, "No longer can it be said that in America no man is above the law, because on that day, the Supreme Court held that the President of the United States, and in particular the former President of the United States, actually is above the law," end quote. Judge Luttig was a stalwart conservative. He worked with then-future Supreme Court Justice John Roberts in the Reagan administration. In 2005, Judge Luttig was on the shortlist for the Supreme Court seat that's now held by Samuel Alito. Both Justices Roberts and Alito voted to grant Trump immunity. Justice Alito had the American flag flying upside down outside his house after the attack on the Capitol. That's a symbol used by election deniers. Judge Luttig went the other way. In the days before January 6, 2021, Judge Luttig, who was then a private citizen, advised Mike Pence that he had no power to overrule the Electoral College results, giving the then Vice President the cover that he needed to do the right thing. In 2022, Judge Luttig delivered one of the sharpest warnings while testifying to the January 6th committee.
Donald Trump and his allies and supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy.
And right now, Trump has told his supporters, quote, "You'll never have to vote again." Joining us now, former United States Court of Appeals Judge Michael Luttig. Judge Luttig, it's always a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for being with us. You know, I just had a conversation with Mayor John Giles of Mesa, Arizona, who had words that echoed what you said to the January 6th committee. He said these election-denying Republicans, he was talking about Arizona, are, he said, a danger to the Republic. You have used this language. You're not saying this is outlandish and wacky. You're saying it's an actual danger.
I have, Ali, and thank you for having me on tonight. It's always a pleasure. A stake was driven through the heart of America's democracy on January 6, 2021, and it has been teetering on a knife's edge ever since. You referenced my testimony before the January 6th committee. There I said, essentially a year later, that the former president was a clear and present danger to American democracy for what he had done and what he had attempted to do on January 6, 2021. For the past 3.5 years, the former president and now his Republican Party have continued to deny January 6th, and they've continued to defy Americans' democracy and the rule of law to this day. And in fact, they're campaigning on their view that January 6th was needed and right. And most recently, I've said that as of today, I believe for those reasons that the former president is an imminent danger to American democracy. You know, Ali, it's America's democracy and rule of law that have made America the beacon of freedom to the world and made America the envy of the world for almost 250 years. And as you said, with Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court cut the heart and soul out of America's democracy and the rule of law. Americans fought the Revolutionary War against the British Crown in order to secure this nation's independence and to create a new nation with a constitutional government in which no man, least of all the President of the United States, would be above the law. And for 250 years, Ali, the fundamental principle and promise of America and the Constitution has been that no man is above the law. You didn't reference my post of this past week, but in that post, I quoted Thomas Paine in his famous pamphlet, Common Sense, written in support of America's independence from the British Crown. And Thomas Paine rhetorically asked the question that was on the minds and the lips of every American: who is the monarch? Who is the king in America? And Thomas Paine went on to answer that question: in America, the monarch, if there is a monarch, and the king, if there is a king, is the law. It can never be said again that in America, no man is above the law after July 1st, when the Supreme Court granted the President of the United States, and in particular, the former President of the United States of America, essentially absolute immunity to commit crimes and offenses against the United States of America.